Welcome back, Dragon Ballers, to our last archetype of Zenkai Series 9, Ultimate Advent. I don't know, man. We're on black now. This is the last thing. We're seeing a new Prison Planet deck, which is really cool. It was like the first big one in Heroes, and we are still in it. Like, we haven't left it. We still don't have hearts from, like, the Universal Seed and stuff yet, so I don't really make the rules, so let's just jump straight into it, and let's talk about Cooler. So, we've got Cooler and Golden Cooler Dimension Transcending Growth. So Cooler is on attack, draw 1, and then activate main, you can discard a black for a Prison Planet card in the top 5, which is honestly really good, right? Like, it's super consistent. You still get to plus when you actually draw. You're setting up your drop area for all of your effects, since you do just basically constantly warp them from your drop area and then continually get value like that. Your Awaken is at 4 or less, or a 2-cost Black Z Unison with an energy cost of 2 in play, as long as you have 2 or more energy. So you cannot do it on turn 1 with a marker. Draw 1 and switch one of your energy to active mode, and then add cards from your life until you have 6 left. So it's a 1-1. I think it might be the only 1-1 of the set, if not one of like 2. Most of them are just draw 2 leaders, so being a 1-1 is really solid in a black deck like this, because it does mean that you won't actually have to tap out for that Z Unison. You might get an additional playoff. But let's continue and see what this backside does. So, once per turn, if it's your opponent's turn, when your Prison Planet card is played, draw 1. So, I'm sure there's going to be some ways to do that, which I've already read ahead, but yeah, there is. And then activate main, you can warp 2 Prison Planets from your drop area, play a 3-cost from your hand, and it gets plus 5,000 per turn. All of those cards, except for one, has a trigger on when the cards gain power. So it's going to be a really nice way to just go, alright, well, I'm going to free play out this 15k body, it goes to 20 and gets an effect. And then activate main, you can discard a Prison Planet card to draw 2. So that's really good. Honestly, this is totally really solid leader. You draw plenty. It seems like a fine thing. I think my biggest worry would be that Black's card quality is just still okay, especially since this won't be an Overrealm based deck, right? You'll still run some Overrealm, especially because you can charge them. But it's not really something that, like, you're going to be overwhelming 6 every single turn. That's simply not going to happen, and right now that seems to be something Black needs to do in order to compete. Then we have the Z cards, the Awakening Enable Fu Schemer Behind Everything. Great art, great looking card. Permanent, it gains Prison Planet in all areas. I don't think that really seems to matter a whole lot, aside from the Trunks card from drop area, which we'll talk about later. But auto, when it's played, top 5 for a Prison Planet. If you add something, discard something. And then +1, when your opponent attacks, you actually get to warp 2 Prison Planet cards from your drop, and then you get to just play a 4-cost from your hand, and it gains blocker. So there's only 2 4-costs, but they are really good, and it does allow you to immediately go, alright, well, now my leader says draw a card. Right, play a blocker from your hand, draw 1 for no energy cost is really, really effective, especially if this Fu lives for a turn cycle. And then Cumber, Banishing Evil is a 1-2. It's a blocker 15k. When it's removed by a skill or KO'd, you get to play a Schemer Behind Everything out of your Z deck with 1 marker on it, which is fine. It's not a great effect, but, like, it does allow that during your opponent's turn you can create a Fu and just, like, alleviate a lot of pressure for very little, because you just make a blocker. At the end of your turn it restands, so you get a 15k swing. I don't know. Card seems good. I think you should just probably be playing 1 of it, maybe 2, to enable it, but at that point it's like you're already going to play 2 or 3 Fu Schemer Behind Everything, and then you're starting to run like other black cards. I don't know, we're going to kind of see how that shapes out. And then if your leader is a Prison Planet and you place 3 of them from your warp back into your drop, you actually get to choose one of your cards and gets 5,000 for the turn. So this you can add on to one of your leaders if there's any cards with dual attack or anything. There aren't, but getting to choose one of your cards and just give it 5k for the turn, you could use this on any of your other type effects, right? So if you think about like a big dual attacker, or if there's any, like if you decided to play a Fu Cumber package, you'd be able to give your Fu 5k to go up to 30. Something solid to think about. And then we've got the super rares. These cards are super duper good. So Golden Cooler, Golden Fighting Spirit. This card is crazy. So for 3, activate main for a black, 3 blacks. You can place up to 2 black battle cards from your warp back into your drop, so you can fill it up immediately for your effects or Overrealm or whatever. And notably, not at all restricted at this leader. So this is playable in Hachiyak, because when this card is played, you warp one of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and then until the end of their next turn, non-leader cards have to warp 1 card from hand in order to attack. So if you're using this in like Hachiyak or something on turn 3 and 4, you just go, or 4 and 5, you just go pay 3, play this, 30k double strike after you get whatever Overrealm card you play for the turn. And then you get to go, all right, here's an 8-cost double strike, and now if you want to attack next turn, you have to start losing cards from hand, and you get to go Power Burst, grab back a negate. Petrification on the card that was going to get a lot of value, right? Like, it's so solid to be able to get this effect off, and I'm really, really impressed by this card. I think this could actually bring Hachiyak into basically full contention all on its own. And then we have Cooler Strongest Pride, which is one of those 4 costs. You can play it for 1 black if your leader is black and you have 3 more energy. You get to warp one of your opponent's battle cards and then play it from your hand. Small noting, it does warp the card first and then play itself, so if you were to, say, play this against, in a black mirror against like an Evil Saiyan, it would remove it and then this card would come down. When this card is played, place up to 2 of your opponent's place 2 of your black battle cards from your warp into the owner's drop, and then you can choose a black card and it gets +5 for the turn, so you can choose itself, you can choose your leader, you can do whatever. Very solid, and since when it's played like that, you can do that off of the Fu, and then immediately bump your leader to a 20k for the turn, which is beautiful, right? Getting 2 cards back to your drop area, going ahead and use your leader's skill to draw a card, and then the auto on this to get 5k to your leader is just really, really effective. The 3-cost prisoners, so these are going to be the ones that you free play from your hand each turn. Free playing a Vegito as a vanilla, it goes to a 35k. Honestly, just a big number. It's nothing crazy. It's definitely, like, okay. I think it could maybe be played at 2, but these other cards all have a different effects. So they all have the same play condition of 1 black for limit 1 to play it if you have 2 or more energy. If your leader's a prison planet, that is. And then they all have the same auto trigger of when the cards are increased. Cooler searches top 3 for a prison planet card, which is a draw, which is not bad. Bojack puts 2 prison planet cards from your warp back in their owner's drop so you can refuel your effects, and then Hachiyak warps one of your opponent's 4 or lesses. So Cooler and Hachiyak are obviously the better cards here. Bojack is like fine because it keeps fueling your drop area, but it's not like you're going to have an issue filling your drop area. It's that you're going to have an issue filling it with like 6s to be able to overrealm and get a warp 2, right? You'll always be able to do your warp 2 or warp 4 in a turn. It's really going to be inefficient if you're going like, oh, well, Bojack here doesn't actually do anything. It's just like a play as a 20k and get 2 cards back. Whereas Cooler draws a card and then Hachiyak removing a guy. Those are significantly more effective. Or even Vegito as just like a 35k beat stick is really, really strong. Then we have the other 4-cost prisoners. The Goku is at the end of the battle switch to active mode. For a black, you can play it if you have 3 or more energy, and you can actually move 2 cards from your warp back to your drop, and then send one of your opponent's battle cards to the warp. Extremely strong card, 1 energy removal, and then getting to refuel your drop area. Notably, since it does gain blocker when played by Fu's skill, you do get a dual block off when this card comes down, so that's really, really solid. And then the Majin Ozoto is Revenge, so again, you get to play it, give it blocker, not bad. And when it's played, your opponent warps 1 card from their hand, so you'll get to go like, Fu +1, play this Majin Ozoto, your opponent loses a card, you draw a card from your leader, and then this is a Revenge blocker for later in the turn when you want it to. Very good stuff. Card is super solid. And then we've got some cantrips. Both of them are the Trunks Futures that say either top 5 for a Prison Planet 4 or less, or draw a card. And then they have the exact same auto. So when it's sent from the warp from your drop by one of your Prison Planet card skills, you can remove it from the game and then choose one of your cards and give it 5,000 power for the turn. So you can do this on your opponent's turn, again, to make yourself huge, right? Like you could use this plus the Cooler SR to make your leader into a 25,000 power card on your opponent's turn, and then you just can't activate any Trunks Future cards in any areas for the turn. So you're not so it's basically a super hard limit one where you can't even activate the other Trunks 1-drop, or if you want to do something like the Overrealm DPR, you wouldn't be able to do that. So it does lock you out of a couple different things, but honestly, these cards are super solid and just really solid 1-drops to play in the deck. This is not the SCR. I don't know why it's called that. I just didn't change the extra card, but you know what it is. The leader is a Prison Planet, and you send 4 Prison Planet cards when you drop to your warp. Counterplay for a black, effectively. You get to play a Prison Planet with an energy cost of 4 from your hand and it gains barrier and blocker. That's fine, right? I think that's, like, okay in the sense that you get to pay 1 and produce those other cards. My big issue is that it's a -2 from hand to make 1 barrier blocker, which is not very efficient. Even if you haven't triggered your leader skill yet, the assumption is that Fu is going to be out and you're going to be able to get some sort of play anyway. Like, you might play 2 of this because it does have the activate battle to just give something 5k for a battle, but like, I don't know. And then it obviously can trigger your 3-drops if they live, since they are just once per turn when their power is increased. So just something to think about. You could play 4 of this, but I think it's probably just going to end up being like a 2 of. And then it gains Prison Planet at all areas to make it searchable. Again, SCR, but it's just a super comboer. Sure, why don't we call that? It's just the cycle that we got last set, where if your leader is black, all your energy is black, and you have 2 or more Z energy, bottom deck 1, draw 2. It's searchable in this deck. It's a cumber, which is actually decently relevant for some other cards that we have from the cumber deck. I don't know necessarily if that deck can maintain 2 Z energy well enough to play this card, but it is something to really take advantage of, that there's like going to be plenty of black decks that don't necessarily want to pick down to 4, but they do have tons of Z energy. Like Shroom and Salsa can make really strong advantage of this card, right? Like you're going to have 2 Z energy, so you might as well just go ahead and use this as a way to stay at a higher life total, or use super combos earlier when you want to push. And now we actually do have the SCR, which this card looks incredible. I cannot wait to see this card in person. So this is our 1-cost victory strike that people are... They're on... you know what? They're right. I don't know. Is this card the best card ever printed, or is this card the worst card ever printed? I cannot tell. So you can play it for 1 if your opponent has 4 or more energy and you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand. And then you can't activate skills on any cards in any areas for the turn. So this is a 45k victory strike, which is really good. And then if you have 6 other cards in your hand, you can combo it up to 30k, assuming that none of them are super combos that are 0-10ks, and that none of them have 0, that all of them are comboable. So that means that if your opponent is to somehow not negate this attack, you'd be able to swing and go to 75, which is a big number, but it's not that big of a number, right? Like, it's going to be something that you're going to be able to basically always push through whenever you want the chance to go and just go, hey, you know what, like 75 is big, but you know, you use 1 battle trick, and then you use your Z extra and you put 2 super combos on it, and then like you lose a couple cards from hand, but your opponent just spent every card in their hand to make this card happen, not to mention the fact that they don't have access to any skills for the rest of the turn. So if you already have a board, this is really solid, that like you could just put your opponent on like constantly losing cards from their hand and board wiping them, because if they activate counter or blocker, you get to warp all of their cards and they lose a card from hand, not once per turn, so every time it happens it'll trigger again. But I don't know if that's really something that's going to make the difference for this. So there's totally a world where you could set this up, right? If you're playing like yellow or something, your opponent taps out, you go, all right, 3 for Absolute Annihilation, and then pay 1 for this, and you go, all right, cool, now I'm just going to kill you with this victory strike here from a really high life total or something. Or if you're playing against green and you know their hand size is going to be real low, you just put them in a position where they don't have a negate, you play this for 1, and then you push for game. So I don't know, it could be okay. It's searchable in this deck, so it's generally going to probably be played if you're not playing Evil Saiyan, but card could be really good, card could be really bad. What we do know is that this card is gorgeous. With that, I think that's really going to be it for the Cooler deck. Prison Planet's super cool. It's one of like the early Heroes arcs that we talked about earlier, and Golden Cooler does make his triumphant view there. I think it could be an interesting thing that in the future, maybe we see something like a Golden Meta Cooler Z Leader as like support, like backwards support when the deck comes out. I do want to see more backwards support for Cumber. The fact that the Cumber deck and the Foo deck aren't considered Prison Planet is really obnoxious, if I'm being honest with you guys. It's just one of those things that, like, that's a tag that they could have thought of for sure at the time, and then these cards would be backwards or forwards compatible, or they'd be able to work and design around each other, but instead these cards are all basically locked to this deck aside from the SRs. So with that said, I hope you guys have a good one, and good luck to Cooler players all around the world.